December 1872. In the Atlantic near the Azores, the crew of the Dei Grazia spotted a vessel moving awkwardly under partial sail. At first glance, it looked like a ship in trouble, but not a ship in final collapse. When boarding men crossed over, they found the name, Mary Celeste. Then they found the real shock. No captain. No crew. No passengers. No bodies. The ship was empty. This is the core of the mystery and also the reason it has survived for more than a century. The physical object remained, but the people were gone. If the ship had sunk, we would call it a tragedy. If it had burned out, we might call it an accident. Instead, Mary Celeste occupied an unsettling middle ground. She was disordered, yes, but still afloat and recoverable. That contrast drives the puzzle. Why would experienced seafarers abandon a vessel that still looked capable of crossing open water? Every serious theory has to answer this basic contradiction. Not just how people disappeared, but why they would choose, or be forced, to leave a platform that was still, in practical terms, a better survival environment than a small boat in the Atlantic. Before Mary Celeste became a legend, she was an ordinary working ship with a traceable history. Built in Nova Scotia and launched in 1861 as Amazon, she later shifted ownership, registration, and identity, eventually becoming Mary Celeste under American registration. By the time of the famous voyage, she was part of routine commercial shipping, not a notorious vessel with a dark reputation. In November 1872, she left New York bound for Genoa, carrying industrial alcohol. On board were Captain Benjamin Briggs, crew members, and Briggs's family. The final known log entry was about 10 days before discovery. That 10-day gap is important, long enough for a sequence of escalating problems, short enough that this was not a months-long disappearance into complete oblivion. We are dealing with a ship that remained inside the normal traffic world of Atlantic commerce. This historical framing matters because myths often begin by treating such vessels as cursed from the start. In reality, Mary Celeste began as a standard business voyage, with contracts, cargo values, route calculations, and professional seafarers making practical decisions in a high-risk environment. What did rescuers actually find aboard? The details are less cinematic than popular retellings, but more revealing. Mary Celeste was not in pristine shape, yet she was not a shredded wreck either. Some rigging and sails were compromised. There was evidence of disruption and water ingress concerns, but she remained navigable. Critically, the cargo was still present in substantial form, provisions were not exhausted, and personal belongings had not been stripped in a way that screams organized plunder. One item did stand out: the lifeboat was missing. That single absence changes how we evaluate the event. It suggests departure rather than total on-ship annihilation. If everyone had died on board, we would expect bodies or remains. If pirates had swept through, we would expect stronger evidence of extraction and violence. If mutineers had taken over successfully, we might expect the ship to be repurposed, not abandoned. A missing boat, combined with an intact enough ship, points toward a transfer event. People moved off Mary Celeste while believing that choice improved survival odds. The mystery becomes a decision mystery. What did they think was about to happen that made leaving seem safer than staying? After recovery, the ship was taken to Gibraltar for salvage hearings, and this legal phase profoundly shaped the legend. Salvage law required courts to determine whether recovery was legitimate rescue and how compensation should be calculated. But in suspicious circumstances, courts also had to ask harder questions: was there foul play, collusion, or insurance manipulation? Authorities considered multiple possibilities, including mutiny aboard Mary Celeste, piracy by outsiders, and fraud scenarios. These were not fantasy questions. 19th century. Maritime commerce included real fraud and real criminal incentives. Yet the hearings reached no decisive proof for any grand conspiracy. No theory fully matched all available facts. The result was unresolved suspicion and a lower salvage reward than a completely clean rescue narrative might have produced. This unresolved legal ending matters because ambiguity creates narrative oxygen. Once an official inquiry fails to close the loop, public imagination takes over. People often assume a hidden answer was suppressed, when a simpler explanation may be that evidence was incomplete. Gibraltar did not solve the disappearance, but it institutionalized uncertainty, and that uncertainty became the foundation for every later retelling. One of the strongest practical theories involves the alcohol cargo. Mary Celeste carried industrial alcohol in barrels, and even without a full detonation, leaking vapor can create fear of explosion. This matters because seafaring command decisions are often based on perceived immediate danger, not on what later investigators can calmly conclude from dry paperwork. Imagine the crew detecting unusual odors, hearing concerning sounds from the hold, or seeing evidence that suggested pressure issues. A captain might order temporary evacuation to a lifeboat as a precaution, expecting to remain nearby or to reboard once danger passed. In that framework, abandoning ship is not irrational panic but controlled risk management under uncertainty. The tragedy could then occur after the decision: line separation, weather shift, distance growth, and inability to return. This model explains why valuables and provisions stayed behind. It explains why the hull survived. And it explains why no obvious massacre evidence appears. Its main weakness is the absence of a definitive final message from the crew confirming this sequence. But among non-sensational explanations, the vapor fear and temporary evacuation model remains one of the most coherent because it aligns with both physical clues and known human behavior in high-risk maritime operations. Weather-based explanations also remain credible, especially when treated as decision triggers rather than pure destruction events. A ship does not need to be torn apart for weather to force a fatal chain of choices. Sudden squalls, threatening cloud formations, waterspout risks, or abrupt sea state changes can create moments where officers believe immediate action is required. If those weather stresses coincide with existing concerns like rigging issues or uncertain water levels, confidence in the vessel can collapse quickly. The key concept is perception gap, what the crew believed in real time versus what later observers infer from the surviving ship. A crew may evacuate because they believe sinking or explosion is minutes away, while the vessel ultimately stabilizes and drifts on. In such cases, the ship appears survivable in hindsight, but the decision context on board was genuinely alarming. This logic is uncomfortable because it implies no villain and no single dramatic event, just compounding uncertainty. Yet historically, many maritime disasters are exactly that: small errors, imperfect readings, and bad timing. Weather theory is strongest when combined with separation mechanics, where a lifeboat and mothership lose contact faster than expected, converting a precaution into disappearance. Mutiny and piracy are the most popular dramatic explanations, but they struggle under close scrutiny. A mutiny narrative requires a motive, a takeover, and a plausible aftermath. If mutineers removed lawful command, why abandon a workable vessel with food and cargo? If they escaped in a smaller craft, why without clearer theft patterns or a documented destination? Piracy theories face similar friction. Pirate actions usually leave extraction signatures, valuable removals, obvious violence traces, or witness links through ports and other crews. Mary Celeste does not provide a strong, clean piracy fingerprint. Of course, absence of evidence is not automatic evidence of absence. It remains possible that a criminal encounter occurred and left little trace. But good historical reasoning favors explanations that require fewer hidden assumptions. Criminal theories here often require many simultaneous unknowns: unknown attackers, unknown method, unknown disposal chain, unknown movement, and unknown silence across maritime networks. The more assumptions a theory needs, the less stable it becomes. That is why many modern historians place mutiny and piracy below environmental panic models in plausibility rankings. They are narratively powerful, but evidentially expensive. Then came the myth engine. Over decades, Mary Celeste moved from shipping records into popular culture, where uncertainty is often treated as an invitation to invention. Giant squid attacks, supernatural abductions, and paranormal sea legends entered the story because the structure of the case invites them: intact ship, vanished people, no closure. But myth expansion did not happen only through fringe speculation. Mainstream fiction also played a role. In 1884, Arthur Conan Doyle published a story inspired by the incident, and its popularity helped spread altered details, including the misspelling Mary Celeste, which many people still use. This is a classic pattern in historical memory. Fictionalized versions become emotionally vivid, then overwrite duller but more reliable facts. Eventually, audiences remember the atmosphere better than the evidence. For serious analysis, that means we must separate reception history from incident history. Reception history tells us how societies consume mystery. Incident history asks what likely happened in 1872. Both are interesting, but only one addresses the crew's fate. The longer a mystery survives in media, the harder this separation becomes, and Mary Celeste is one of the clearest examples of that distortion process. Another underused piece of context is the ship's later life. Mary Celeste did not instantly become a permanently cursed relic after discovery. She returned to service under new owners and continued commercial operations. That continuity matters because it weakens ideas that the vessel itself was uniquely doomed or structurally impossible to manage. Eventually, in 1885, her final chapter involved deliberate wrecking near Haiti as part of insurance fraud. This later fraud is real and documented, and it proves that maritime financial crime in the era was not hypothetical. But we must avoid backward contamination. A proven fraud in 1885 does not prove a conspiracy in 1872. What it does show is why investigators in Gibraltar were sensitive to motive questions. They operated in a world where ship values, cargo, insurance, and legal claims created incentives for deception. Still, evidence has to stay case-specific. The 1872 abandonment remains ambiguous because its direct proof set is limited. Looking at the full lifespan of Mary Celeste reminds us we are not dealing with a supernatural artifact. We are dealing with a commercial vessel moving through a risky economic system where both accidents and fraud were possible. So where does this leave us? The strongest conclusion is not a single solved scenario, but a hierarchy of plausibility. At the top are theories where the crew intentionally left the ship during a perceived emergency, likely expecting temporary separation and eventual reboarding. Candidates include alcohol vapor fear, severe weather alarm, or combined technical concerns. These explanations fit key facts with fewer contradictions: missing lifeboat, substantial onboard supplies, intact enough cargo, and no decisive violence record. Lower in the ranking are high conspiracy criminal models that require many unverified steps. Lowest are paranormal and monster claims, which offer narrative thrill but no evidentiary foundation. The enduring power of Mary Celeste comes from this unresolved center. We have enough facts to reject obvious fantasy, but not enough to close every gap. In historical method, that outcome is legitimate. Uncertainty is sometimes the most honest endpoint. The crew's exact final hours may be unknowable, yet the case still teaches something enduring. Under pressure, humans make decisions with incomplete information, institutions try to reconstruct events from fragments, and culture transforms ambiguity into legend. Mary Celeste remains famous not because we know the answer, but because we can see the outline of an answer without ever fully reaching it. If you found this helpful, please like this video and subscribe for more explainers.